Okay, Jim, go ahead. Righty. And it doesn't require that I click got it. Oh, there's an OK up there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
clicked
it'll
OK.
work. Okay, welcome to the January meeting of the Pasadena Radio Club. And kind of got a special one this time. And I'm just going to read the intro for it from the front of the bulletin. Um, and if someone watching this doesn't realize, we've just experienced the tragic fire that burned so much of Altadena, and a good number of our members were directly affected and ex-members. Uh, we feel some sort of impact from the tragic Eaton fire that devastated Altadena and other cities. For some who lost so much, the time spent in conversation with old friends in the radio club setting could serve as something familiar in a world turned upside down, and we hope it can be useful therapy. This month, instead of the usual presenters talk, we will hold something like an open forum. This is not a faraway intellectual practice. We, the Pasadena Radio Club, and by extension, Spark, the Pasadena South Pass Club, are at ground zero. Our theme centers around responding to the fires. What was your experience? What happened? Did you use ham radio to assist yourself or others? Did your emergency response training seem relevant? If not, what needs to change to become relevant? We might guide the questions, but we're here to listen. We want your help and your experiences. And that's what was on the front of the bulletin. There were pictures, some of the houses, or what used to be houses. Back to you, John.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the one of the incentives of this was the last board meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. And we went around in the discussion of how impactful it had been to have all this training for emergencies. But in this case, we are in the middle of the emergency, and some of the comments we got indicated that other structures were used during the emergency and not so much ham radio. And so we were wondering what the general response was. Was our training for emergency response helpful to anybody? Do we need to alter is there some reason we need to upgrade, renew, change our training so that it's more relevant to things like this? And I know that, when you're outside of an emergency, it's easier to help people go from a distance. And right now I'm in Colombia, for those who didn't know it. And so I've been watching this from a distance and watching my house from a distance, but I was south of the freeway, so I wasn't affected. But I have 72 people in my church lost their houses. And so, it is impacting me, but I have a view from a distance. So we'd like to just go around and people share, what their experience was with how they got help and whether ham radio was relevant in this situation for you or not. And so with that, I'll open the floor. Alan.
Okay, well, we lost power. A couple of things. I have some notes. We lost power, and the police called me because they lost communications. So a number of reasons that happened with digital communications, all the rest. It's irrelevant. The fact is, by working with the police, they called the people they knew because we participated with them. So went down. We helped them till about almost midnight. Another thing is the thing I missed is I didn't have an I had to evacuate. I went away to Costa Mesa. Didn't have an HF station with me. I just had a 2-meter 440, 220 radio in the car. So that's the last thing I did is when I came back, is got a 220 station. Sorry, an HF station tucked in the trunk of the car. Another thing was call forward your home phone before you leave. Another thing is be able to get to Edison. Make sure you can get into your account at Edison, and Edison shows you whether the power is on or off by days. You'll see whether there's any power. So I knew that the power was back on in my house within 48 hours, which meant that the freezer did not totally defrost, and I was able to save that. He had all the stuff in the refrigerator ready to toss. But there's just those things that were interesting I would have never thought of.
So you're saying, what I'm hearing is that since you had to evacuate, you didn't have the communications capability you would have had if you weren't in the middle of the emergency, but that it was important that the police knew who you were and that you were able to help them initialize when their system failed.
Right.
So that part's great. Thank you.
In other words, be associated with your local sheriff, police departments, whatever. And then when they had a problem in the EOC, they knew who to call. So that's important. If you can get it associated, it's helpful for the local community.
Got it. Are you complete?
I'm done enough.
That's that's what I mean. When I say complete, I mean, are you finished with your share and we can open it to
No, I
someone
have
else?
one other thing. I sent
Okay.
to you and John, and you might have gotten mixed. I have 4 2-meter radios and 1 UHF radio that's available. It's called, I'd say, free or best offer, obviously free. They all can access repeaters, and anyone who wants a radio, it's yours. Just go for it. Just let me know.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, who would like to share next? Okay, Hal,
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Uh, Greetings. Glad to see folks here that have had real challenges. One of the problems I had was that we were in a zone where we were supposed to be ready to evacuate. And so I had my car loaded up, and I didn't want to drive that car to Kaiser, where I had access to their emergency operations room. Because I didn't know if I was going to have to leave my home. And there were I would have to help my son with the cats and so forth. So I was torn at a point between trying to be somewhat helpful and responsibilities at home. But I had telco on all the time, and there was actually very little going on telco. And when I was able to listen to it, because I was doing other things also, people were sort of using the frequency for a lot of non-essential conversation. Maybe that's okay. But I thought, gee, maybe they should leave it open, just check in and say they're listening. So the thought I had was to share with other people that at a time of emergency like that, we should limit the amount of time we talk and keep the channel open for people who might need it. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. And does that mean that you didn't feel, when you shared this to the people, did you feel like there needed to be, during the emergency, a net controller actively on the channel to, effectively create what you just suggested?
Yeah, it should have been somebody willing to just volunteer to say, I'm net control, and I will be listening for people, somebody to act as a net control person.
And is there some, I guess, John Minger, you have some control over this and some other people do. is there a list of people who can control the repeater, like know the codes to turn it on and off, and who can enforce net control if necessary?
I once knew those. We kind of count on Bill Westfall. Bill wouldn't have been very available during that day because he was hit. Uh, yeah, I used to know him. Alan may know the code. So there are some.
Well, someone who the people on the air would recognize as having or I mean, maybe just we all would, because you declare an emergency and you're asking the channel to be kept clear. You're taking on the role of net control. And maybe we can all take that on, but so maybe it's an area we can set up some structure around, and maybe it's an area we want to create a non-structure structure so that it happens regardless of who's available.
Well, maybe one of the members at large can take that as a job to say, okay, I'm going to be the person who organizes that for this year.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Thank
John,
you. Yeah.
Bruce. Yeah, just a little counter to what Hal mentioned. I had, the fire started Tuesday evening, and I had my radio on virtually the entire time through Wednesday, Thursday. I will say that it was sporadic messages. Nobody was ever dominating the frequency. And in that sense, there was no net there. But some of us did provide resources to others that asked questions. So it was very informal, but there was never any interference with anybody that wanted to move messages from one place to another. So
Right.
now I might have expected, the alert group to get on there, and I never really heard them. I'm not sure if they were activated on another frequency or a simplex frequency or not, but if somebody knows about that, they can mention that. My experience was Tuesday night, I went into a film screening in Eagle Rock with just the Palisade fire going. And when I came out, I was getting text messages from neighbors saying, "What about the fire?" And I said, "Well, it's in West LA." I asked somebody in the theater, lo and behold, I was shocked to discover that the Altadena fire was raging, and there were downed trees on Avenue 64. And in fact, Marengo at Colorado had a giant tree. There was only enough room for one car to get through Colorado Boulevard, at 9 o'clock at night. So, in fact, I called it in a 911, and the dispatcher said, "I have 250 calls ahead of you." So, needless to say, I didn't make any more 911 calls that night. But I will say, Racy's had a plan, which is if an event starts, the first person can start the net, and then somebody with more seniority comes along, they can take over. And that, to me, is one of the few things that I took away from Racy's as something of value. So I think that was, a valid thing that, if there was traffic to move. But the repeater always worked well, and Bob Dingler even checked in because he knew that the MPH repeater is placed very well to cover this area completely. So I thank Bill, and I send my condolences to everybody that lost, homes. It's a terrible thing, and I hope we can move beyond this. It's going to be tough, though, but that's my 2 cents. Back to you, John.
John,
Yes.
one of the issues is the type of disaster. If this was an earthquake, it would be a heck of a lot different than where people are evacuating. Earthquakes, it happens and it's done, and then you are either available or not. And when something like this is such widespread problems, I think it has to be considered of what type of disaster and how we can help out.
Okay. So this strikes me as more. It's more
Channel 700.
Alexa, stop.
I'm going to mute mine too.
Okay, with that, for instance, a hurricane is a longer term disaster, but it also has a built-in time sense because you see the whole thing move and you don't have people out trying to stop the hurricane from moving. So it's a different kind of response. Okay, who would like to participate?
I think we could.
Okay, Adrian?
I'm Adria, KB6TUG, and I'm with my dad, KI6XU, Rollin. And dad was a part of the Pasadena Radio Club probably just before COVID struck. And for me, it's been a lot longer. I was about 20 years ago or so. But yeah, and we both lost our homes. I was thinking about it as you guys were talking, it was like the radios. When we first initially got the text message that something was going on, I didn't even think about radios, in all honesty. And yes, I do have for earthquakes a radio in my school bag, so I do have it to go. But I just went into panic mode, and we saw the flames coming up. It was probably about 6:30, quarter to 7. And we live in Las Flores Canyon, so that we're at the very top of Lake Avenue, just below the Cobb Estate. So it was, and we don't have very many hams in there. We have Larry.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you. I cannot think of his call sign right at the moment. But we kind of all went into panic mode, and I went to my dad's house, got everything out possible that I could do, and then I got him in the car, got the animal in the car. He drove up to my house to get ready to go, and then I went in and got as much out as I could. I do have my radio. He doesn't have his radios. He lost all of his radios. But then, so we pretty much had about 2 hours. I spent an hour at his house, an hour at my house, and then we got out. We went down to below Altadena Drive and sat, probably a good hour, and sat there and literally, it exploded. We watched the flames exploding. We have a text thread in our neighborhood, and as we all exited, we let one person, I think there was one person that was the person there, that contact person. And I'm out. And it was funny because one of the things is Larry out, and I saw him as we were leaving. And so I knew that he had gotten out as well. So we did it that way, and we got everybody out safe.
No support.
Yeah. And my husband, Lars, who was a ham, and he forgot to renew his license. But anyways, he stayed till about 3 o'clock. And then he was all by himself. He was even telling me more today that I didn't realize, is that he saw some embers fall on a neighbor's yard, and he went and put that out, and he watered our house 3 times, and he put the sprinklers on at dad's house, and the water pressure was extremely low. And in all that time, he was all by himself. We had no support from firefighters. We had no support from police officers. And then when the wind finally blew his hat off and the embers were landing on his head, he said, "Enough is enough." And he got in the car and went. And if anybody's interested, he has a YouTube. It's called This Old Mine with Lars. And he has a video of some of the fire that was going on, and of him exiting the canyon, or our single street out. What he didn't realize is, when he was exiting, the fire had wrapped around behind us, and it was coming down Lake Avenue. And I would say he barely got out. He did have a crack in his windshield. But he kind of roamed around Altadena for the rest of the night. Luckily, my next door neighbor's mom has a condo down in Pasadena. So we spent our first 2 nights down there. So we were safe there. But It was, my ham radio, I mean, I've got the disaster and I'm on the disaster committee at work. And the ham radio just, I didn't even think about it. I went into pure panic mode to get him out and to get me out. And
Were you using cell phones and other things at the time?
yeah, we were all on
Okay.
cell phones.
So that system did not fail.
No.
Okay. And the other thing I heard that I didn't quite, not sure I heard it correctly. Did you have a neighborhood watch or something where one person was delegated to determine if everybody had gotten out?
It wasn't an official neighborhood watch. It was somebody that had started a neighborhood thread that was giving out information about things. And she just naturally fell into the position of, we all checked in to make sure that we were out. So it just was kind of a natural thing for her to do.
Interesting. Sounds
Are
like
you-
a good idea.
Are you still in Glendora, Adria?
Yeah, we're still in Glendora.
Well, it's good to see the two of you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, John. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a challenging 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks tonight. I haven't gone back. Go ahead.
Adria, how many people are on your text thread?
Oh gosh.
Around 30, isn't it?
Let's see. The Altadena group. Oh, it doesn't say. No, it's not because we now have two threads going. We have my street, which is Alpine Villa, and then my dad's street, which is Ellington Villa. And so I think we can only put 20 on the text thread. So, we're kind of we try to make it so it's only important people or like one person per household are on the
Right.
text thread. He's not on it. I'm on it for him.
I'm not.
But yeah. But anyways, I haven't gone back to work yet. I'm a school teacher. I'll probably be going back to work Thursday. Well, we'll see how that goes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think my internet dropped. Do you have anything else or are you complete? Oh, they're muted, so.
I have a question for her. You said you were doing texting. Did you try using audio or regular phone calls? Because I know up here in the foothills, up in Tujunga and La Crescenta, that I could only get through with phone calls about 15% of the time. So I'm interested to see what you got.
We were texting the whole time. Yeah, yeah, it was texting. We weren't doing phone calls at that time. So it was all texting.
All right, thank you.
And that was a conscious decision on your part, or you just noticed that not having to have people, quote unquote, pick up the phone was probably was the text messaging system you use confirming that the message was received like WhatsApp does?
Well, we've got a group of our neighborhood is pretty young. And so that's the way. Yeah, the oldest one on the block. So it's natural that we text more than we do the phone calls. So
Right.
it just was what we did. In fact, my phone is constantly going off now because now we're all trying to get together to help each other. They're getting out forms for us today. We got what is it? The second cleaning. The form came out for us to have the government or the Army Corps of Engineers come in and clean off our property. And so the form came out today. So now we're all talking about that and, oh, we're filling out this form or we're filling out this form. So right now our texts are all informational based and we're helping each other out. It's been, it's been so helpful because I'm trying to do two at once with my house and I'm trying to do my dad's house, all of that kind of paperwork, whereas my husband's doing the paperwork for our house. So it's overwhelming. I don't know how many people did lose their homes, but it's just been just so overwhelming. And all the paperwork you have to do. And I've been down to the recovery center 5 times now, and they have been pretty amazing. When you go in there, you've got things to how to get deeds, to get your birth certificates. FEMA's in there, Red Cross is in there, the assessor is in there, and every time I go in there, I find something new.
And when you say the center, you're talking about the convention center?
No, they're at PCC. That's where FEMA set up
Okay.
originally, and now they're on Woodbury, in the old JPL building.
Basically across the street from Jackson School.
And it's a one-stop shop that you can ask any questions. For example, we lost my husband had just got his new tags for his pickup truck. Today we went in and they gave him a new set.
Free, by the
Free.
way.
Yeah, it's free. Birth certificates are free. The deeds, they'll send you out your deed to your house.
Plans for your house.
The plans for your house, the assess for the house. So it's like a one-stop shop. One of the things I learned today was about the swimming pool. And what are we going to do about the swimming pool in the back of his house? And so I haven't looked at the steps yet, but that's kind of the next step is I think when the Army Corps of Engineers comes in, they'll at least get the big stuff out of it. And then we're going to have to figure out what to do next. We're thinking about, my husband has a pump up at the mine. We own a gold mine. Never mind. Anyways, up at the mine, and he'll bring that down and we'll get it pumped. So we'll start getting the water circulated again. Things you got to think about.
Well, actually, this was helpful for me. Sounds to me like someone had emergency plans in place that were actually functional. How do you deal with people who lose their papers or their birth certificates, driver's licenses, car registrations? That sounds really wonderful. How long did it take you to find out where this was and what it would do?
I knew about it pretty early on. Let's see. My weeks are now kind of all blurred. I think we started going last week, and we started at PCC, and we went there a couple of different times. And one of the and it's funny, you don't even think about it, but the veterans were there. And since Dad is a vet, he sat down and was able to talk with them, and they were extremely helpful because there was something he wanted veteran on his driver's license. And so we were able to get that done for him. I mean, simple things like that. So,
how did you find out about the location or that this service even existed? How and when?
It was on the radio.
Well, yeah, it's been on the radio, but our text thread, our neighborhood.
Okay.
We are Catherine Barger and Judy Chu are politicians.
Right, I know.
They have been putting stuff out almost daily as well. And so we will get emails from them that says, oh, there is a Zoom meeting or a YouTube meeting on this day at this time. And so that's kind of where we're getting a lot of our information.
Did you, at any point, or did anybody on this call visit the evacuation centers in Pasadena?
Yeah, I did.
What
Yeah,
was it?
I did the second day.
That was kind of a zoo, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't bad. I don't even remember why. Oh, I know. I wanted to start thinking about FEMA because I knew that they were going to be on board, and I said, I might as well start thinking about it. And so FEMA was not even ready at that point in time. But I did go in, and there were so many people out there that lost so much. Yeah, we lost a lot. We did. But I feel like I've got a job. I'm okay. And I had a place to stay. And so I didn't need any food. So I was just leaving. So I went in, talked to him for a few minutes, and then left.
Right. Right. Did anybody, so I guess we should, I'll open it for other shares from other people.
Hey, John, Dom has his hand raised.
Okay, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Dom Tallarico. I literally joined the club, I guess today or yesterday, depending on when John Minger actually activated my membership. I can give you a little bit of a perspective because my wife and I and our pets were in northern Napa County before the fire, actually after Christmas, before the fire, during the fire, and for about a week after. And I just received my first, I picked up my first ham radio today. So I didn't have a ham radio, but what I did do is I constantly had one of our TV sets on to KTLA, the Fox News local affiliate in Los Angeles. I think it's channel 11. They had excellent coverage of what was going on. And I also was plugged into the Arcadia government website. I live in Arcadia. I'm about a mile up from Foothill Boulevard. The neighborhood, if you know the neighborhoods, it's called the Highlands. We were evacuated for several days. There was no damage, at least none that I've heard of from any of my neighbors. So since I was not around, what I had done, the information that I picked up from the news and from the government website, I actually started a thread with my immediate neighbors. We all know our phone numbers. We all text just because it's easier than making a phone call most of the time. And what I was doing was providing information to them because they were scurrying around. If they hadn't already packed things to leave before the evacuation, they had a lot of problems finding places to stay. One family was able to stay with their oldest daughter where she lives on or near the USC campus. Another family who have a family member who needs a lot of health assistance. The closest they could find a place was in San Dimas. So they weren't really keeping up with the news the way that I could. So my text thread was providing them information from the Fox affiliate and from the Arcadia website. And I was including actual copies of what Arcadia was putting out in terms of how the Eaton fire was going. I also had another website open. I think it's fire.ca.gov that would list all the fires and what percentage of containment, how big they were and what was going on. So I was kind of like a focal point for information for my neighbors. None of them have any kind of amateur or ham radio, so it wouldn't have done us any good. Fortunately, everybody had access to their mobile phones. They had me. But I can see what one gentleman had said. If this had been an earthquake and the towers had been down, and even though I was in northern Napa County and my Wi-Fi was working fine and I could get news, I had cell reception, none of my neighbors would have had that. And the Arcadia government website wouldn't have been up because they need Wi-Fi. So you got me thinking about earthquakes, which of course, being Californians, we know about. One more reason why I'm glad I'm starting to pursue this interest that I have in amateur radio. The other thing was I used, we have a security system. Part of it is cameras. So I could tell at our house when the power went out because the cameras didn't work. And so I also knew when the power went back on, which unfortunately was a couple of days later. So some of our food, which is a minor issue compared to what other people have had to deal with, we threw out just to be safe. The area was well protected, not just from the firefighters and all, but Arcadia Police and the Sheriff's Department. We're definitely coming around. I did get one video of one sheriff's deputy who knocked on our door, and obviously we weren't home. My wife actually drove down, or she flew down. I drove her to the Oakland airport. She flew to Burbank, got to our house because she wanted to pick up her car and a few things that we felt comfortable enough that one of us could get through the security. You had to show ID. You had to know the neighborhood. The protection was pretty disciplined and severe. And then she did what she had to do, and then she drove back up to our place in northern Napa County, and we stayed there until we felt it was safe for us to go back, or it was reasonable for us to go back, along with bringing our pets. So that's just to give you a little different perspective from someone who was also not around, but certainly affected. And I was minimally affected. I'm really sorry to hear all the tales of people losing their homes. And I do have some family members that did lose their homes in Altadena. So we're helping them as best we can. And that's about it. I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Dom.
You're welcome.
And I heard a number of interesting things. One question for you. You're in terms of getting back into your property, does the Highlands area have a private security system, or is this just you're talking about this public police just doing their job?
It was strictly Arcadia Police and the LA Sheriff's Department. And my wife had to show identification. She was asked a few questions to make sure that she, in fact, knew the neighborhood, which she did. And I believe one of the officers actually escorted her to the house. I think that was more to just make sure that there wasn't any damage, which there wasn't. I mean, the main thing we had to do was that one lady was saying our pool was a mess. I mean, the winds just kicked up all kinds of nonsense stuff into our pool. And I'm our pool guy, so I was the guy that cleaned it up. It's all fine. Again, that's a minor thing compared to what other people had. There were no incidents in the Highlands, and to my knowledge, in Arcadia, in terms of looting or anything of that sort. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, it does. Okay. Who would like to continue the comment? Okay, Alan, you have your hand up, and I have
Just a quickie. We had West Covina Police blocking streets. We had a National Guard, and we had a local police. So everybody was in here helping out.
okay. Thank you. So earlier, Kevin, I was going to say it's about I want to hear from you.
I'm not logged in a way that I can raise my hand. But Roland and others that don't know me, the former call was AC6VW, and before that K6OTT, and before that KN6A. I forget it. I forgot my novice call, my first call. Sorry. I lived on Mount Curve, which is a couple blocks down from Roland, and I used to walk the trail up to Larry's house, every day at lunchtime. Some interesting things that happened with this. I found out about this from work. I'm one of the lead engineers at Edison, and they called me to first ask if I was safe, and then to ask if I could work because they had a situation. And I said, "What's this about?" And then they told me, and my wife looked outside, and she had seen a glow on her way home from work that was kind of biased, but the wind was blowing directly south at the time, and I wasn't too worried about it. But then she looked out the window when I got this call from work, and she said it's close. And I looked outside, and we could see the lines where they're showing that the flames originated, and the flames were just starting to come over the ridge, and it was blowing about 70, 80 miles an hour. And the wind shifted directly west. And within, I'd say 15 minutes, they were so close that, we were running, making trips, and the power went out. And so we were in the dark, and we had enough time to fill the back of her Volvo. And literally, I have a fancy car, so I drove it down to the end of the street and parked it. And then she picked me up and brought me back up. And we got my truck and her car out of there. I had to abandon my 4x4 that was in the backyard because our driveway goes into the back with an electric gate. And I didn't have time to go find the manual opening in the bushes for that electric gate. And I mean, literally, I could see flames, 40, 50 feet high. And I'm south of what Rowan and his daughter were talking about. I'm where it wrapped around first. And I have some pictures. I think I might have shared one with John, but I have some pictures of us going down and had to go through flames on both sides of the road. And the street was clear, though. It wasn't. I'm making it sound more dramatic than it is by that, but literally houses were on fire on both sides of the road as we're going down the hill. Now, I did have the presence of mind to grab one of my HF radios, and I grabbed my brand new fancy HF radio, and I threw it in the back of her car. But that's the only radio other than the one that was in the abandoned 4x4 that I have. And it turned out, finding out a few days later, that 4x4 was the only thing that survived. The house completely burned to the ground, but the 4x was sitting in the back of the driveway, and in the middle of the driveway in the back. And somehow the flames went around it, melted the taillights, melted the rubber trim. Just got an estimate this morning finally from Geico that it's $10,000 to fix it, but they're going to fix it. But it miraculously survived. And I went to come back up to the house to see what the damage was. And, the roads were all blocked. So I went back to work, and I changed my clothes and checked out an Edison truck and drove up here with one of my friends at work and got through right away. But they did originally have police, the sheriffs and CHP was a CHP guy was the one that talked to us and told us that we're sorry, but nobody's allowed in. This was, early on before they started letting in people. But then when I came back with the Edison truck, they just let us in. And that's when we got in the truck, my 4x4, and started it, and I drove it back down and got it out of there. But that was because it was the only shiny thing within 2 blocks. And I was afraid of looting and things like that. The odd thing, though, was I started getting pages on my phone about 9 o'clock. So I heard the news stories about people on the west side not getting pages till later, people on the east side getting pages earlier on their phones. Well, I'm the difference on that one. I didn't get anything until about 9 o'clock, and I got an evacuation order. But I knew nothing about it. I was actually talking to somebody back east on my HF radio when it all came up, and it happened so quickly. I had some training because a long time ago I did do search and rescue with Jerry Newcomb, if you guys remember him, and Dick Sale. And I should have had more presence of mind, but I just took off and thinking I had a handheld in the car, and I didn't. So I didn't even get on the radio. I just had the HF that I grabbed. And no, Al, I don't want a handheld. But it's just, when these things happen, it's just sometimes you don't have time to do anything. We stopped for a second. I told my wife, go down and grab the box with the documents. I grabbed our laptops, and we have a parrot, and she grabbed the parrot and threw him in a cage, put him in the car. Those were the first things we got. Then she went upstairs and got her jewelry, And I reached my hand in the closet, got some clothes, and she reached her arm in the closet, got some clothes. And that was when I looked out the back and said, we got to go. I can't do anything. We got to move the car. And we moved my one car down the street, came back, picked up the other car, and we were out of there. And it was to the point where 3 or 4 days later, we're refugees at her sister-in-law's house. Her other sister also lost her house as well. And she lived over. I can't even think anymore. She lived on the east side of Altadena. I forget the name of the street, but anyway, about 3 days later, we were going somewhere, and my wife said, "Put some shoes on." And I looked around and I said, "I don't have any shoes." And I had flip flops on, and we had to go to JCPenney, and I bought 3 pairs of shoes. A pair of old tennis shoes. A pair of tennis shoes that would get old. A pair of nice shoes, and a pair of something comfortable just to wear around the house. Didn't have anything. My wife, she got lucky and grabbed where her business suits were, so she's able to go to work. I happened to just get a few dress shirts. I didn't even have pants, so we had to get some Levi's. That was it. But those, that stuff doesn't matter. It was just, we did manage to think about the important things, which were first ourselves, of course, then the documents, the laptops. I didn't get my backup drives. There wasn't time to go through and grab them in the closets, but I have cloud backup, so I'm okay with most of that. But anyway, that's what it was for me. It was just so fast. We didn't even know what to do. We didn't even have time to think about anything other than the instinctual, get the most important things first. And I left 19 guitars up there.
Oh my God.
Some of them very valuable, like 1967 Martin D28, which about $14,000 worth. We just got out of there.
I hope you got insurance on it.
Yeah. That's the other part. We applied for FEMA the next day, and about 3 days later, we were denied on all of it. But it was because we had insurance, and we got additional living expense on it. So money is not a problem. Housing's a problem. Just in general, not having things that you wish you had. But that money is not a problem. It's still working, and we had 2 houses that burned. One of the houses, they're being very proactive and came up front with the 30% of personal property and 4 months of additional living expense. And I have a recommendation for everybody. I work with the attorneys at work a lot, and we work on fires. I'm actually I had to be excluded from this, of course, but I'm one of the ones that do the investigations on wildfire. And those attorneys suggested to me to watch a video, and also one of my neighbors got wind of it as well. The Beverly Hills Bar Association, you can look them up online. They have a 2-hour seminar or webinar on what to do. And there's 6 attorneys on it, and they go through it, and from the very beginning say, we don't want you. We're not looking for clients. We don't want any clients. Don't call us. They just wanted to get the information out there, what your rights are, what you can expect from your insurance, what to accept, what not to accept. And I can tell you it's legitimate, because one of the guys that's talking about the Thomas Fire deposed me on the Thomas Fire. I was the PMQ, or the person most qualified for Edison, on the Thomas Fire. And so these guys know what they're talking about. And some of the things that they told me was that, or that the video told me, was that you can take all of your different coverages and add them in to your dwelling, because everybody's probably going to be underinsured. So you probably don't need to find receipts or pictures of all these little items you own to get your personal possession. Mine was 300,000 personal possession. Well, I don't need to find anything, and the insurance confirmed that that they're just paying us the full thing because the dwelling is underinsured. So that, and then your extra coverage for other buildings, we found that that's rolled in and you can put that towards your dwelling. And I'm not sure if that's because it was declared a disaster area, but I think that had something to do with it. But I highly suggest somebody go and watch the Beverly Hills Bar Association and watch the video they've got. It's kind of enlightening. And I talked to one of the attorneys at work unofficially, and he said, yeah, that's spot on. And then he spent a half hour with me to make sure that we were doing things correctly. So, and the other thing is they might try and offer you 75%. Pay attention to what your dwelling coverage is, and if you're underinsured there, don't take the 75%. You're going to get 100% regardless, even if you don't have that much personal to add up to the amount, because it'll go over to your dwelling. All right, that's all I've got.
Thank you. I have one question for you as someone from Edison. Edison should have been one of the companies or areas that our emergency communications system was tied into. And I'm curious whether there was anything other than your normal Edison connection that was used by Edison in this. Did Edison, to your knowledge, use contacts in ham radio or anything, or just was?
I'm not allowed to speak to anything company policy.
Oh, okay. Well,
sorry about that.
That's all right.
But I can't. All I can tell you is they contacted me, and I did get a page, and it's just I can't speak for any of it. And I'm what's called a senior engineer 2 or a consulting engineer. So at my level, I can't speak in public on anything.
Okay. Excellent. So we're about an hour in. We've probably got about a half an hour to go. So at this point, I'd like to ask whether people are getting value from this. Do we want to continue this format, or do we have any suggestions for changing the format?
Well, we've already started the format, so we might as well continue with it.
Well, but we could impose a time limit. We could there's a number of things so everybody can share, but maybe not everybody wants to share. But if they're happy with the way it's going, we'll just keep going. But I just wanted to put it out there that we're open to being of service.
29 minutes up, and then you'll have a minute left for whoever. Just kidding.
Hey, John, we can go as long as we want to, so there's no real cutoff. We don't have to get out of the building or anything, and the Zoom can go as long as I let it. So,
thanks, Jim.
Yeah,
I think it's me.
Okay, so who would like to pick the conversation up?
Oh, looks like Alan's got his hand up.
Okay, Alan.
Well, a couple of things I found that made me feel better being evacuated. But if anything happened, I have, because I've traveled a bit, everything on auto pay. I don't know whether you guys how you pay your bills, whatever, but personally, auto pay automatically pays every flipping bill, and I don't have to worry about stuff in the mail or whatever. Second, cloud storage of both our computers, our major computers. Ham radio computers, screw it. But the major computers, mine and my wife's computer, I have Carbonite. So everything's backed up. So I don't have to worry about a backup drive or anything. And a safety deposit box. So personally, all I had to do is grab passports and go.
Thank you. Yeah, because I'm hearing that and I have friends who were involved in this that
Looks like John froze.
In the rush to get out the moment that they didn't bring shoes or yeah, I'm having internet unstable messages.
Yeah, we missed a little of what you said. You got cut off, but you came back.
Okay, well, it's just about following up on Alan's that
There it is again. Well, the rest of us can
in the
still
pet,
talk.
our instincts are, yeah, you can, yeah, but I don't have to be on. You guys can share.
I had a question. Are
Yeah.
people allowed to go into Altadena now, or is it still restricted?
I think it's residents, isn't it?
Yeah, there was nobody asking today. We went up today and got my smoke. Well, my smoker survived. Go figure. But we went up and picked it up, and nobody was even asking for ID.
Yeah,
But
well,
in,
the same thing, that there is nobody that's stopping anybody anymore.
except for the electrical trucks.
Oh, the trucks that are all over the place. It's kind of hard to drive around because of all the trucks, and sometimes in front of roads and such. And there are roads that are blocked off because they're putting up new power poles. But no, it's everybody can get up there now,
Oh, the looky-loos will come.
and there's not much to see,
well,
or maybe I should say a lot to see.
put a gate up and charge admission to anybody.
Well, I learned something from all of this. We always used to be ready. We'd have our bags to go, and we'd, have our batteries charged, and we'd have our multiple ham radios and so forth. And years ago, we were ready at a moment's notice, and we knew where all the pictures were and all that kind of stuff. And through the years, it's gone by the wayside, us being prepared like we used to be. And perhaps something we could do as hams is to put something in the bulletin, maybe at the at our meetings or something. We can put out things for, here's some of the minimum things you need. Here's don't forget to go back and check that your batteries are charged, and check and see how old your water is that's in your go bag, and check and see, do you really have toothpaste and a toothbrush in there? And is it solid now? Did it dry up and go bad? Make sure you've got your current medicines in your go bag. And the dog, or your cat, or your, in the case of Kevin, his parrot, and make sure you have food for them and the medicines for your animals and stuff. A spare leash and a spare collar for your animals. Who knows what's going to happen? And one of the things that really surprised me was I put the scanner on, put the ham radio on the scanner, my portable, my little handheld, and I found very little activity on ham radio anywhere on the bands for the 2-meter 440 stuff. And I was very surprised that it was that low. And that CERT is now being disavowed by the fire department. And they are not going to be using CERT anymore. They're trying to get rid of it. They see this, I guess, as a cost problem. I don't know for sure, but I think that's part of it. And we may need to create individual groups of people that can perform the functions that CERT does that we normally would expect. I was very surprised at how hard it was for me to reach Cindy. But there's hours that went by when I would try to call her. She would be in Tahunga, and we had power failures there for about a day. And up in La Crescenta, we had 5 days with no power. And trying to make sure that we could have our phones charged up and get through to each other. Even then, I could only get through about 15% of the time, giving her a call or even texting. It was very surprising. So we went to the handhelds, and we found that even with the handhelds, we had a tough time getting through to each other, trying to get through to use the DX repeater. I'm not sure why we had such a tough time communicating through the ham radio. And we always, of course, as ham radio operators, we always figure it's the last line of defense and it will always work. And even then, getting through was very spotty. The signal quality was horrible, And I could tell that it was her voice, but I couldn't make out what she was saying when she would talk. So we've got to work on that too and get that solved. Get ham radios in our cars. We used to have them all the time in our cars, and we don't now. Now we're depending on our handhelds. And so that's another thing, this is, it takes a disaster to realize what you're failing in and being ready for a disaster. I had to throw out thousands of dollars of food in the freezers and the refrigerators because of the power failures. And that was no fun. Used to be when I was younger and ready, I would have frozen ice cubes. Like I'd use the half-gallon cartons and turn them into giant ice cubes in the freezer so that, hey, I was ready. So when the earthquake or the fires or whatever happened, that I could throw those into the refrigerator and it would keep everything nice and cool. But those things had bursted and melted through the years and gone bad, and it didn't work. The plan failed. And boy, you sure learn a lot. And over time, we expect things we did 15 years ago are still working. No chance. So it's quite an eye opener. We are very lucky that we still have our residences, Cindy's house and my house. But I'll tell you, it was pretty crazy. And communicating was much more difficult than I imagined. Of course, I worry about Cindy, after she's had her medical things she's gone through, like 3 years ago, she was in a coma for 17 days. And so every day I always hope that, that she's okay, because it just came on so suddenly back then. So every day I still worry my ADHD in regards to Cindy. Or what do you call it? Post-traumatic stress syndrome. That would be probably better, PTSD in regards to that. I know Hal probably knows the exact phrase or term for this psychological anomaly or whatever it is, because he knows a lot about all this stuff. But yeah, that's basically what I had to say, and I'm hoping that maybe we can get everybody to get back up to speed. Anybody that's the last time they were ready 100%. Now I know Jim and Michelle are probably, I know they're up to speed 100%. God bless them. But us, the rest of us, I don't know. As the gray hair moves on, we're not quite as ready as we were 10 years ago. And hopefully at some point, maybe we can get back to that and we can be ready and help our community when needed. But it was very surprising, I thought, that there was so little activity on ham radio. And hopefully we can be ready next time things happen. And hey, we got a summer coming up. I'm sure there'll be fires again, and maybe even earthquakes, shake and bake as they call us, out on the East Coast. And we'll see what happens. And Kevin, God bless you. And I hope there's something we can do. I don't know if you're still there, but I can't see. But I hope everything's going to be okay. And to the other people that have lost homes, I'm so sorry. And there was something we could do to help make it better. And I don't know, maybe underground water storage. We can have hundreds of thousands of gallons everywhere under every house, and everybody can just pump it. I know. We talk to the federal government. Everybody has to have a pool and a pump and a hose system, so that if the fire's coming, everybody can pump water out of their pool and put out the fire. The only big problem with sustained 80 to 100 mile per hour winds for 12 to 14 hours straight, there ain't shit you can do as a human being. And that's just killer. Anybody says different, they didn't deal with these winds. I had gates ripped off outside of our house that the wind it just took and destroyed. Anyhow, I talk too much. You guys take care. I thank you.
That I have seen.
Mark, let me dovetail on a couple of things you mentioned. One, the Catalina repeater was passing a fair amount of health and welfare traffic.
Mm.
And there's 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. nets there. So that repeater is kind of used to being organized. So I was impressed with what they were doing. And regarding protecting your house, years ago, I went to a meeting of the West Side Amateur Radio Club in Santa Monica. And somebody was mentioning that the family that owned Henry Radio had a pool, and they had sprinklers on the house, and they had pumps, and they could even activate the sprinklers with the ham radio signal.
Oh, wow.
And that was 30 years ago, at least.
Wow.
So, yeah, but that's Henry Radio. There's special people.
Yeah, Lou had a hand up a minute ago.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, regarding Mark's comments about CERT, the issue for CERT is in LA City proper. And it's not that they're disavowing CERT, it's that the city is budgeting out CERT because financially the city is in such a bad way, they're looking for ways to cut their funds to things to cover all the various lawsuits that have come up and hit them hard. But there's a lot of pushback going on right now about getting rid of CERT and its training. So that's one thing. CERT otherwise is still very active. And in fact, one of my ham radio colleagues is a CERT in Monrovia, and they came in and wound up supporting Pasadena with some of their expertise, the Monrovia CERT. So it's still out there, it's alive and kicking. Another thing is that PRC is not set up to support and develop emergency radio communications. That may sound controversial. I don't mean it negatively. It's just that that's not something that PRC does. There are other groups in the area that support emergency communications. One of them, which I'm involved with, is ARES, the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, and the Northeast District that's here in the San Gabriel Valley from Pasadena going east. And we primarily use DARN for our communications, or we go with Simplex. But DARN was very active, especially Tuesday night into Wednesday. There was a full running going on, sharing information as things went on. So those are things. And ARES Northeast is an open and welcoming group that would be happy to have anybody join them to learn their emergency communications techniques and capabilities. So this isn't a recruiting message, but it's something for those of you who want to think about it to understand. Luckily, I didn't lose my house, but my daughter, who lives in Altadena with her fiance, they lost their house and everything they had. So, we're currently serving as their support base. They're living with us until they can find some place to rent for the time being. Did someone want to ask a question or comment? Okay. So there's that. I had to evacuate as well. I wound up first having my daughter come down here from Altadena, and then she evacuated with her 3 dogs and my dog and went to West Adams area. I went to a friend in an apartment whose apartment doesn't support pets, but I was back here the next day. I wouldn't have, frankly, I wouldn't have evacuated because I didn't lose power. I did have some trees go down in the front yard off the street, but really there was no danger to the house. I suppose it got close. From my understanding, there was some, I live relatively close to the PHS, and so it was scary with all the sirens and police announcements going up and down the streets and the like. So I acquiesced to my daughter to get out. I didn't take much because I felt I was going to be back the next day. I did take a radio, an HT, plus I had the mobile radio in my car. So I felt covered by that. But I was sadly remiss, as I think Kevin was mentioning about, grabbing clothes or anything. I just packed a couple of things and got out because I figured I was going to be back the next day. But that wasn't the case. I was back. So I've kept a go bag since that time, ready to go, and more, because it became an issue, or it could become an issue at any time. Had a couple of other things. Pools. I have a friend who lives on New York Drive. He didn't lose his house, but he lost his backyard garage. He has a pool, and he had it evaluated, and there were so many toxic things in the water that he had some people, the evaluation said, number one, it's got to be pumped out. Two, the inside of the pool has to be scrubbed. And third, the pumping equipment and filters and everything else have to be replaced. Which is also another thing for your cars. All the filters in your cars ought to be replaced, because they probably have brought in so much soot and dirt and everything else. They're probably clogging things up, and your car is probably laboring more than you would want it to. As far as filters go, the other thing was I took out the filters, the return filters from my air conditioning and heating unit, and they were black. Now I have these metal reusable ones. So I just washed them out and was able to put them back in, but they were black as heck. So if you haven't looked at those of you who didn't lose your house, you may want to do that as well. So anyway, those are some of the things that I have.
No, that was great contribution, especially thinking about things like the car filters and things that just would be out of sight, out of mind. I heard one thing earlier. It's 11:27, by the way. So I think what I'm going to suggest is we officially close the meeting at 11:30, but continue to anybody who wants to, so that people don't feel more obligated to stay if they're beyond their limit. But I did hear an interesting conversation when talking about,
Yeah. Losing.
X because it's more it's true. We have a annual race, the AC 100. John Minger is one of our lead supporters of that. But over the years, packet radio went from a background support to the main support for this kind of thing. And it has the advantage, or digital communication in general has the advantage of being able to handle messages and queued up messages. And you can also confirm that it got received or picked up. Maybe part of the emergency communications concept, what a digital communication for really complicated things like that.
You're cutting out again, John.
I can write this up later.
I saw Adria's hand up earlier. I don't know if she wanted the floor, and
Who?
Adria, did you have
Oh,
something?
okay.
I was going to say that we did have a swimming pool at Dad's house, and he did buy a pump for it. At one point in time, we hadn't gotten the hoses for it, but the problem is that when you're all by yourself, as my husband was, there was probably no way that he could have run the pump and used it. We would have needed firefighters up there helping us out.
Right.
And the second thing is the CERT. When I was at the recovery center the very first time, there were CERT members guiding everybody to the places where we needed to go, the booths and the people we needed to talk to. So I asked one that, where'd you come from? And one was Temple City, CERT. And then there was somebody, maybe he's like, I'm somewhere out here, like San Dimas or something around us. So they brought in the CERT people to help with the recovery center. Anyways, I am falling asleep. I've been awake since 4. So I'm going to say good night to everyone. And thank you, John, for inviting us, and have everybody take care. And thanks a lot. So
Thank you. Great
good night.
sharing.
Glad you could make it.
All right. So, Jim, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that this is a replay of what happened in October of 1993. We were here for that. A fire started in Eaton Canyon by a homeless person who was trying to stay warm on a cold morning. And the fire spread. It was very similar to the events this year, 31 years ago. We were a lot younger then, so we stayed at that time and tried to protect our property. And we're a lot older now, so this time we actually evacuated. And the winds this time were stronger. The flames were bigger than they were in '93. But wanted to comment about the pool. Both in '93 and this year, we cleaned the pool ourselves. Basically, you let as long as you have power and you didn't lose any pool equipment. We have an automatic pool cleaner that cleans the bottom, but we turn that off, clean the surface of the pool, let the volume clean out, use a leaf catcher to get all the branch leaves and things like that off the bottom, and then let the automatic pool cleaner remove all the residual carbon into the filter. And then I bought new cartridges for the filter, and I'll replace those at some point. But the pool looks perfect. Did basically the same thing back in '93. So a few of our neighbors drained their pools, but most did not. They just cleaned them up, and it's been fine ever since. Another comment was after the '93 fire, a neighbor of ours installed a fire pump and had hoses and had sprinklers put under their eaves in order to protect their house. And so that way they could use their pool water in order to protect their home. And, for many years after that, they would test it once a year and make sure it was working. And then the hoses rotted and they didn't replace them. And then the pump wouldn't work anymore. And so they abandoned that. And, 31 years later, they're basically in the same boat, but they don't have all the equipment that they had planned to have when the fire. And that's sort of characteristic of events like this, where I call it a sawtooth function, where we're immediately after a major event, everybody's on hyper alert, and you build all these capabilities and make sure you have all your emergency equipment ready to go. And then over time, you relax a little bit here and a little bit there, and pretty soon the next event occurs, and all those preparations you made aren't there anymore. And then the event happens and you start all over again. It happens in, classified information where when you have a security breach, everybody's on hyper alert. And then after a while, everybody relaxes until the next security breach. It happens for any kind of emergency preparedness where, the day-to-day living overcomes your preparedness. It's really hard for us as people to stay vigilant over long periods of time and be prepared for black swan type of events like these fires or earthquakes or things like that. And I don't know how to solve that. It's really tough. We suffer the same thing, which is why we chose to leave this year instead of staying like we did when we were half our current age. So anyway, what's that?
We had dogs then.
Well, yeah, we had dogs then too. Okay, so back to you, John.
Thank you. Well, I assume that the people who are still here are here out of their own volition, but I am grateful that all of you are here. Does anyone else want to pick up the mic? And
I have a comment.
okay, Kevin.
Yeah, and it's going to what Jim was talking about with the pump system and the pool. Now, and I'm not just referring to that, but a good thing to keep in mind is anybody that's going to build anything like that. Remember the reason why a lot of us got into ham radio to begin with. Battery operated repeaters, battery operated radios. You're not going to have power. So if you were going to get that type of a system, remember the power is probably going to go out. And that's for any type of disaster you're preparing for, any type of system that you're going to get for that, you need to have batteries to sustain it, because otherwise it's not going to be available when you need it, even if it was well maintained. So yeah, that's all I have. Just
you want a battery fed, a gravity fed system, preferably.
Yeah.
Exactly. So our neighbor had a generator to provide power for the pump.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. So, but he didn't keep the whole system working long enough to be useful 31 years later.
Yeah. No, I got that the point definitely, but I just wanted to add on to that remember that you have a remote source of power as well, because a lot of people like in this case, it's the same as people that turned the sprinklers on their roof and left. There was no water pressure, so the pump with the sprinklers is a good idea, just like sprinklers on your roof is a good idea, but no water pressure, no power, that kind of thing. So you got to be completely self-sufficient, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, or have a community where this is done as a part of the planned community. When you're built along a margin between forest and city or urban. I mean, the comment that I heard when I did some research on this kind of fire was the last 2 years we had fast growing grass. We had more water than we've had in a long time. And then this grass burns pretty quickly, but it goes out just as fast. But when the fire reaches the urban area, it's got fuel. The fuel in the houses That's when the embers can continually generate and be picked up by the winds, and in this case, a blowtorch basically to Altadena. So you need something that would prevent the embers crossing the line.
Well, like putting screening on vents isn't a bad idea. Oh,
And it probably means the whole area is parks with water projects, and I'm unstable. I don't know if I'm still getting there, but I would think, just knowing human nature, that you would want to have recirculating water that you're not putting into the ground, like a curtain of water that you could throw up and it's pumped. So, maybe fountains that would throw a water wall up 100 feet on demand, with the water doesn't run out because it just falls back into the same thing and gets repumped. Now, again, you have power issues, right? How do you do the power? But the point is that would stop this kind of fire. But how often do you have this kind of fire? How can you get the community to believe that something like this should be really necessary? Because it's an investment, right?
Yeah, John.
Yeah.
The city of Pasadena, we're in a little finger of city of Pasadena and surrounded by a county. But the city of Pasadena every fall comes around and inspects every house up here in this fire-prone area and requires that the residents clear any hazardous, potentially hazardous growth. And it's worked both in the '93 fire and this fire. We didn't lose any houses in the city of Pasadena. Here,
Yeah,
but I don't know if
got
the county does that either. But
no. But you're talking about the comment in the people who deal with forest fires. Trees even burn very quickly and go out. Houses start to burn. They burn for hours or a long time.
Yeah,
They're the
that's
real
true.
fuel. You got to stop the fire before it gets to the city. I mean, forest fires are going to happen regularly anyway. That's part of nature. So just be able to take responsibility for the fact that we're building right next to something that's going to light up every couple of years.
Yeah, with Santa Ana winds predictable every year
Yeah.
and drought conditions, yeah, it's ripe. It's going to happen often.
yeah.
It's been happening since the 1500s.
Yes, exactly. And the Forest Service actually had, as I recall, earlier in the century, they had rules that, fires that started, they weren't going to put out. They're going to let them burn, except when they're too close to residences. I mean, that's just because the forest fires are necessary for the forest. Pine cones don't germinate without a fire. So, it's part of nature.
John, I've got a comment about a product.
Yeah.
There's a product called Barricade. If you go to firegel.com, I believe that's the URL. It's been around a number of years. I've never known anybody to use it, but it's a gelatin material that you put in a sprayer, like a garden sprayer, and you coat your house with this stuff, and it gives you 8 hours of protection after you've applied it to the house. It takes several gallons, and it's $500 or $600 investment to cover the average house. But apparently it does work. Now, the 8 hours thing, that I don't know if that's real useful, but it's better than nothing. So it's something to look at.
There's something.
Google fire gel or Barricade. It's on YouTube also. Go ahead, John.
Okay, I was going to say I heard aerogel or fire gel that if it's on the house or on the object like a piece of wood, it can provide up to 8 minutes of preventing fire with it. You can put a blowtorch on it and you can get 8 minutes of protection. I don't know how long, like you said, I don't know what the lifetime is when it's not being burned. 8 hours might be enough and maybe not, but certainly that kind of thing of like proactive protection against the fire getting a hold of real fuel.
Right.
So, oh, yeah, and I'm sorry to have put so much into it. I really want to hear people. So does anybody else want to come online?
I could speak about the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Mount Wilson, which is safe.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, so I live in South Pasadena, so we were good. They turned the power off. They didn't tell us why, or when it was. They didn't tell us when it came back on. We knew when it went off at 6 o'clock in the evening on Tuesday, and then came back on around 4 o'clock in the morning. But they didn't tell us why or anything like that. Anyway, and I end fed long wire broke at the balance, so I had to go back on the roof and reattach it. Otherwise, we did okay. Um, and I do have a backup generator, but was hardly worth getting out of the garage for we just kept the refrigerator closed. Um, I work at JPL, and there was about 5,000 people that work at JPL these days. They've been cutting it down, and there was 1,000 people were evacuated, and 200 of them lost their homes. And I went from working a couple of days a week to working every day in a week because I had to cover for people who had uh, evacuated and hadn't gone back to their house yet. So they they had more damage from the wind, and I've been at JPL when the winds hit, and nothing like a 6 foot by 6 foot piece of fiberglass sheeting flying through the air to tell you it's time to go home.
Yeah.
But they just needed some time to recover from the wind damage, and of course everything has got covered in soot. But so we were remote last week, but this week they're allowing people to come back on a regular basis. So they're getting back to normal. When things were evacuated, they took the Deep Space Network communications first to Goldstone and then to uh, uh, Monrovia, where they have an emergency communication center for doing all the communications. And I work on Perseverance, and so they sent some commands up that a few days after the fire started, just to reset the timers on the spacecraft, so it wouldn't think that something happened to Earth and that or to the rover, so that they had to go into safe mode and start swapping hardware around to try and solve it. So we kept it out of safe mode, and it's we've been back up to normal this last week, sending up commands and doing science and drilling stuff, and most of the other missions are in the same boat. They're all back up and running, and the DSN control center is back up at JPL. So we survived, but a lot of people are going to have problems for a long time getting their own house in order. Mount Wilson, there was a couple of control panels that were right on the edge of the uh, facilities up there, and they got singed, but the rest of the place did okay and survived. So we still have the 100-inch and the 60-inch telescope, and all the broadcast stations up there are still going. So we it could have been a lot worse, and so we're lucky and we're glad that everybody else is um, at least alive, except for I guess 17 people was the last count. So our hearts go out, and we're here to help any way we can. So that's all I have. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some people are here that, Stan, I haven't heard from, and Paul, do you want anybody, either of you want to step up? Paul, I know you lost the house.
What?
I thought I saw
my
that.
my tenants evacuated and forgot to take their cell phones, so tells you something what was going on. Yeah, it was relatively uneventful for me.
Okay. And let's see, we have Lou Soloway and we have, who else do I need? David and Justin that I can see have not.
I don't
Oh,
live in the area anymore, but I was interested because I used to live in Altadena on East Washington near Altadena Drive. So I'm just basically listening to see what I can learn from other people.
okay. And from your listening and observation, is there something you could, that you saw that maybe could be elevated or that you think could help us in the future?
I don't really know. It's like I still don't understand exactly what went wrong because I know some of the same areas were burned in the 1993 fire, and I did live in East Washington Boulevard at that time, and there were places that burned. I think on McGuire, not that far away from where I lived. So that this is maybe why I'm taking an interest in it. And of course, here in San Dimas, we're also prone to fires. A lot of people were concerned about the Glendora Ridge fire that happened in the summertime. And the city here is, I'll just comment with the city's is planning to get together a meeting with the sheriff's department, which we don't have a police department, so we have the sheriff department here, and we have the fire. LA County Fire is right next to the sheriff's department. And they want to get them together and have a meeting along with Edison and the Golden State Water Company, just so people in the area can learn about that. I don't think they've set a date for that meeting yet, but they're hoping to do it sometime in the next 2 months or so, just so residents know what to, to alleviate any concerns they have. That other than that, I don't have much to say.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and speaking of that, I saw there was an announcement for Sunday at a town hall meeting. But I think it's last Sunday. I assume these meetings are going on regularly, but I'm not yet back. I'll be back on Friday, but late Friday.
Hey, John, one more comment. Ken?
Yeah.
Yeah, so early in the fire, when we got the notice to evacuate, we considered evacuating to my sister's house in Altadena on poppy fields. And we chose not to do that. And fortunately, because they lost their house, probably on Wednesday. So you have to think about where you want to go when you evacuate. What we ended up doing is sleeping in our car near Bed Bath and Beyond on Sierra Madre Villa Avenue on Tuesday night and Wednesday night because we couldn't find a motel, and we finally found a motel on Thursday and Friday. But with all the people who were evacuating, we didn't know anybody else anywhere that we could stay with that was completely clear of any evacuation order or evacuation warning. So you have to think about that when you choose. We could have made the wrong choice and gone to my sister's, which we would ended up having to go again.
Yeah.
So something that thinking about a plan, it's pretty hard that far in advance. This fire was different than 93 in that, it didn't burn that much in Altadena, but it burned a lot more over the eastward side in around Kinaloa Mesa, Eaton Canyon Golf Course, in that area. We lost about 130 something homes up here, but people had shake roofs back then. In fact, we had just changed our shake roof to a concrete roof weeks before that fire. And had we not done that, we would have lost our house in the 93 fire. But this time, essentially, there were only a handful of houses lost on the Kinaloa Mesa and, the area where we live, because nobody had fire susceptible roofs. But east of us in Hastings Ranch, there were 60 to 70 houses lost. And to the west of us, around Altadena Drive, there were another 30 something houses lost. So, and the fire was all the way around us in Kinaloa Mesa. It was a 360-degree surrounding, and we didn't lose, only lost a couple of houses. So it was very different than the 93 fire. So it's, in some respects, it's just luck of the draw of where the wind blows, the sparks. But we were lucky both times because we were surrounded in the 93 fire as well. Yeah.
So the rule is live close to you. All right, thank you.
Jim will end up telling us where there is a download of the video of this from his Dropbox. And
Okay.
I will share that with the people that I invited because the majority of the ones I invited were ex-members like Adria. And but I thought they would add something and that they would enjoy seeing it. So I'll send them the link when I see it.
Okay, so should I stop recording now?
Yeah, I think so, because if you want to stay and talk, I'd like it to be in the.
One last item.
Okay.
Excuse me. One of the things that's been really helpful for me is there's an app on my phone called Watch Duty.
Yes.
WATCHDUTY. And I went ahead and paid for, I had it in my phone for a long time, but with the Eaton fire, I went ahead and paid for a subscription, and it gave me a lot more information, and it's extremely worthwhile to have. It gives you all the evacuation warning information, status of how the fire's going. You can even see the winds blowing and which direction they're going. And you can even see planes that they use for water drops and the like. And of course, Tuesday night, Wednesday, when the winds were so bad, there were no water drop planes up, although there were a couple of scouting planes and helicopters, but that was it. But, it's a very interesting and I think beneficial app to have. Again, it's Watch Duty. So you can go to your app store and find it.
Yeah, thank you. I was curious whether people were frustrated in not being able to find exactly where the fire was when it was active, or whether if they had been evacuated, that they couldn't see what happened to their house.
Well, you could see on this app areas that were red that indicated where the fire was burning. So that was helpful.
Yeah, just one comment on the watch duty. It's maintained by volunteers and it's not always 100% up to date. So just be aware of that, but it's a great app. We used it constantly during the event.
Yeah.
And if you happen to have looked at the chat window and seen something you'd like to keep, there are 3 dots in the upper right corner of that. And if you click on that, it'll say save chat, and you can put it in a text file where you can have it later.
Thanks.
Okay, John, I'm going to stop the recording.
Yes, thank you.
Uh,
And
I think I am.
I think